finance rules, the city cannot take an official position on a ballot question. Our purpose and objective tonight is to introduce this ballot question to the residents of Southfield. So I'd like to get started. On November 4th, the city is asking the voters of Southfield to consider a street improvement bond proposal ballot question. The question is as follows: shall the city of Southfield, County of Oakland, Michigan, borrow the principal sum not to exceed $99 million and issue its general obligation on limited tax bonds in one or more series, payable and not to exceed between 11 years from the date of issuance of each series, for the purpose of paying the cost of acquiring and constructing street improvements throughout the city, consisting of paving, repaving, reconstructing, and improving streets, including curbs, gutter, and drainage improvements, and other necessary attachments. If approved, the estimated millage to be levied in 2015 is 2.58 mils, $2.58 per thousand of taxable value, and the estimated simple average annual millage rate required to retire the bond is $2.5 mils, or $2.50 per $1,000 of taxable value. That is the question in front of our voters on Tuesday, November 4th. We have assembled tonight our resource team, and I'd like to recognize Michael Mannion of our Community Relations Group, Lee Schultz, our acting city engineer, Michael Ratcliffe, our city assessor is here, Herb Lowenberg, our city treasurer is also here. Also with us tonight from our elected officials is Councilman Byron Frazier and Mayor Pro Tem, Council President Pro Tem Donald Ficassi. Also, I'd like to introduce our resource team. The city of Southfield is fortunate enough to have 5 consultant engineers. Our 2 lead engineering firms are the firms of HRC, Hubbell, Roth & Clark, and OHM. Tonight, Red Grondeveld will be taking us through a presentation which Council has seen in multiple versions over the course of the last year. So I'm going to turn this presentation over to Red Grondeveld. Members of our resource team from HRC and Red will be available to answer questions. After we go through the presentation, we'll have a short session of question and answers. Thank you. Red?
Thank you, Fred. Welcome, everybody. There were hard copies, I believe, of the information that's on the prompters here this evening, both the mailer that I believe the city has presented throughout the city, and then also the PowerPoint presentation. I may bounce around a little bit back and forth between the exact order that the slides are in the PowerPoint, so if you're following along on the hard copy and it's not exactly consistent with what's up here, I'll try to make sure that we're clear on that. As Fred pointed out, I work with the engineering firm OHM. We've helped the city for...
Are there any more copies of the because it wasn't in the outfit when I came.
We can get more.
Okay.
Okay, some more hard copies of this presentation will be coming down. But we will, everything that I'm talking about will be on the TV screens up here too. So I've worked with the city now for about 8 or 10 years. And one of the things that we've done for the last 6 years or so is help the city try and assess the condition of the streets for which the city is responsible and help try and have a plan in order to be able to manage that. So the presentation we're going to go through here right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the city's road assets or street assets are, the condition of those streets, a little bit about the historic and current funding of streets within the city of Southfield, and then we try to project what some of the future needs would be in order to try and improve the condition of the streets. This is really the study that's the basis for the ballot initiative that has been brought before the voters, as far as I pointed out already. This language is just the exact language that was read by the city administrator. It is also printed verbatim in Beyond the Ballot initiative. It is printed verbatim in the mailer that has been circulated and on the map. So you should see this language. And I'm sorry, this is the overview. The second slide is the exact language. It's what you should see on the ballot itself, and is the exact language that needs to be voted on. I'm going to start out a little bit just talking about the city's road assets in general. So when you travel around any city, such as the city of Southfield, drivers don't really understand that they're driving from roads that are responsibility of many different agencies. In the city of Southfield, primarily there are state roads, county roads, and then city roads, and there are actually some different classifications of city roads that affect how they're funded. But within the city of Southfield, there are about 57 miles of state roads, 26 miles of county roads, and 244 miles of city roads. Further subdivided here into major and minor arterials. Those could be looked at like the more major mile roads or half-mile roads versus the local streets that may be in your neighborhood. The ballot initiative that's being presented is simply to deal with primarily the city's roads. So this is not looking to try to go, and our analysis is dealing with those streets that the city is responsible for. So on the map, and this is also being circulated in color if you can't see it exactly on the screen here, but the roads are color-coded so that you understand which ones are city streets and which ones are county. And just keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward, that if there's a particular street you have a question about, the jurisdiction becomes relevant to the conversation of who's responsible. I think it's worthy to note that just in ballpark numbers, to replace that asset, if you look at the asset as a whole, 244 miles of city roads, it's about a $250 million asset. I mean, in order to replace that asset today, ballpark numbers might be $250 million to start from scratch. That's a significant investment that's been made in the city of Southfield as it's grown for the last couple decades, for the last 50 years. And it's important to know going forward that that's an expensive asset, and we need to be able to invest appropriately to maintain it. I could go into every detail here, but I just want to give a little bit of brief background for what's been utilized to assess the roads. All road agencies within the state of Michigan have attempted to standardize on a rating system so that it's easy to compare and contrast the condition of roads from one jurisdiction to the other. The rating system, there's an acronym for it called PACER, P-A-S-E-R. It's really a simple 1 to 10 metric to try and quickly evaluate whether a road is brand new or whether a road is completely failed. So as we go ahead, as we go forward through the presentation, you'll see the roads being categorized or being rated on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a brand new road right immediately after it's built, and 1 being a road that is completely failed and is essentially impassable. So this rating system, and then as well a piece of computer software called RoadSoft is a program that the city's been utilizing for 6 or 7 years to try and rate the condition, track the condition, and then make some projections about what the various investment levels may do. These have actually been defined and written into state law governing road funding to try and standardize and promote a proper asset management of roads. As I mentioned, it's been about 6 years, so specifically in 2008, 2010, 2012, and then again in the spring of 2014, the entire network of city roads, 244 miles of city roads, have been rated in that PACER rating scale. Some quick statistics here of the city's 240 miles of roads, about 136 miles are asphalt, 106 miles are concrete, and there's a couple stretches of gravel roads still left within the city. In 2014, the quick snapshot of the condition, and actually some of the subsequent slides are going to show this graphically, but 66 miles were in the 1 to 3 category. That's typically what we consider a 4 category, 122 miles in the fair, and 56 miles in the good. And again, those are just some quick broad brushes to kind of categorize whether a street falls in one of those 3 categories. This slide shows how that's changed just in the last 6 years as the city's been rating the condition of the roads. So in 2008, you can see how that percentage distribution was, about 37% up in the good and only 12% in the poor. And between 2008 and this year, 2014, you can see that red at the bottom, the category statewide. The average condition throughout the entire network was about a 4.5. So this is a graphical representation. We can talk more specifically afterwards if people have specific questions about an individual segment of road. It's probably not at a level of detail in the presentation to really do that, but it gives you a flavor. Red was shown as the poor condition streets, and blue is shown as the good. To get a flavor for this, a lot more red coming about on that map. As I mentioned earlier, the rating system is a standardized rating system, so one of the benefits is it's fairly easy to kind of compare different communities and how their conditions rate for their network. So this is just a quick snapshot of how some of the other communities, maybe similar size or in the vicinity, the city of Southfield, rate. So Livonia, Novi, Troy, Romulus, Royal, et cetera. A couple footnotes on here. The city of Livonia started a local road funding campaign and passed the millage about 11 years ago. So 11 years ago, they were at about 5.5. City of Southfield currently rates at about 4.5, so a little bit lower. And after investing about roughly $4 million per year into their local road system, they've been able to move their average condition rating in 11 years from a 5.5 up to a little over 6. So. We move into a little bit of a discussion about funding. I don't think it's important that we cover every single box on this table. I think what I wanted to mostly note here is that the city's funding for roads is primarily directly from what's called the Act 51 formula, the gas weight taxes collected by the state of Michigan, and registration fees that people pay on their vehicle registrations. And there's a formula that distributes that to the state itself, counties that are responsible for roads, and then cities and villages that are responsible for roads. And that's the primary source of funding that the city of Southfield has to try and fund road programs within the city. And in the last 5-year snapshot here, that's been on a steady decline from about a high of a little over $5.5 million down to a low of about 4.5. And that's a significant cut in available funding over 5.5 years. The city generally tries to maintain an investment in the Streets and Highways Department of around $13 million, but in order to do so during those last 5 or 6 years, the city's been in tough financial shape with lower property values and revenue that's been collected. A lot of that funding each year has been made up with use of fund balance. So the city would have to really deplete fund balance or use other funds to try and shore up the highway road funding budget. And from what I understand, it's pretty much have to go down to be able to do that any further. Quick snapshot on the bottom. The city's actually done fairly well in the last 5 years, and actually, if you consider this current year, extremely well of getting outside dollars to invest in the city street system. Primarily, there's federal programs to try and bring federal dollars into the state and invest in the roads. And you can see in the bottom of this slide, the last 5 years, particularly this last year, almost $7 million or over $7 million is being invested, primarily on the evergreen road corridors and Sherman was experiencing this summer with the orange barrels. This is the same numbers, just a graphical representation. Just a little quick snapshot then about what's next for road funding in the state. I'm sure everyone who's paid attention to the media and watched read articles about what's going on at the state level. The state's been discussing all different kinds of options for new funding and different ways to fund our need for funding, road funding in the state. Different options have been considered, including raising registration fees, raising gas taxes, trying to come up with a new way to tax people based upon the VMT or vehicle miles traveled, so you would pay more depending on how you travel, or some kind of a mileage-based user fee, toll roads, things like that. Lots of committees in the legislature have studied it, lots of the trade groups have weighed in with advice, but currently nothing has been brought forward as a solution. I don't want to be the one to try and hypothesize what's going to happen in the next few months, but it seems to be a little confidence that anything's going to happen immediately to try and solve the funding program statewide. Even if new money is brought forward, I think one of the important things that needs to be understood at the local level is that through the current formula, and this is the last bullet on the slide, through the current formula, with the Act 51 formula, for $100 million investment that the state may raise as far as new money, once that runs through the formula, what that $100 million means to the city of Southfield is approximately $310,000 new money. So when the headline on the paper next month, or whenever may read that the state passes a new $500 million funding measure, that's $500 million, multiply that $310,000 times 5, that's maybe $1.5 million of new money to the city of Southfield. So the state's actions, even if they're $500 million or $1 billion proposals for new money, are not, as you'll see on some of the slides coming up, are not expected to solve the need or fill the gap at the local level. I want to move you just a quick minute into pavement management theory, philosophy, asset management, a couple of buzzwords that are on these slides. The general concept, and I think the common analogy that's used is we'd like to relate this to a car. When you drive your car off the lot, as you own it over its life, you choose to make the right investment at the right time by changing the oil, changing the tires, changing the transmission fluid, to make sure that you maximize the life of your vehicle at the lowest possible cost. Traditionally with roads, we tended to build a brand new road and oftentimes run it to failure. The investment level, we usually look to the road that's in the worst shape, tends to get the highest amount of attention, and we run it until it needs to be reconstructed. The right thing to be considering is the right level of maintenance on that road at the right time. So in the first few years, or in the first, this slide here represents the Pacer scale 1 to 10. In the first years following a new road construction, I want to do things like crack sealing. As it gets a little bit older, I might cut off portions of the road and just do patching. And then as it gets even further yet, I may cut all larger sections or mill off the surface of it and put a new overlay of asphalt on it, or things like that. You'll see some of these fixes going down on the road, and oftentimes the public is frustrated because they see these fixes as not a permanent fix. It's not a total reconstruction of the road. I can understand that, but as an engineer, I also want to try and get across that there is a method to madness, there is logic to doing those types of fixes. It's still cheaper over the long run to do some of these lower cost investments, mill off a couple inches of asphalt road and overlay it, or go into a concrete road, cut out some of the worst patches and replace them, or put crack sealing in the road, even though it's not going to be a perfectly brand new road when you're all done. Since we're limited in the funding we have, we've got to be able to be wise with the investment that we make. Next couple slides just try to illustrate this point a little bit graphically. If I look at a road over a 36-year period and it had about an 18-year life cycle, 20-year life cycle, if I ran it to failure and I reconstructed that whole road and I got another 20 years out of it, I would spend X amount of dollars trying to repair that road or maintain that road over a 20-year period. In this illustration, we're saying it's about $3.30 per square yard per year, versus the same type of investment where maybe 5 years in I seal the cracks, maybe another 5 years in I do a thin overlay of the road, and then maybe at 20 years in I come in and I grind up the road and I put a new layer of asphalt on top of it. These are just different types of construction techniques that you may see going on throughout the city. But if I look at that same 4-year cycle then, in the second scenario, I've spent less per year, per mile, or per area of road trying to maintain that asset. And that's really the key point that I hope people understand as we move into this. The city will have to, if the funding base passes, the city's going to have the challenge of trying to figure out where to spend the dollar, where to spend the next dollar. And it's not always necessarily going to be a road that's the worst. In some cases, it's going to be a better investment of that dollar to try and preserve a pavement that is right at the point where if we cap it or maintain it over it, I can save it and not have to run it to failure and spend the extreme amount. What does the funding situation mean for Southfield? And this isn't unique to Southfield. I think this is every local municipality that's responsible for roads. So you have to take some kind of action. Well, the state funding, if and when it ever is adjusted, is not expected to generate enough funding to improve the city's roads on a local level. I think you'll see not only in the city of Southfield, but in many other communities in Southeast Michigan or statewide, there are a lot of ballot initiatives out right now where communities like Southfield are trying to raise revenue to maintain roads at a level of service that the public wants. For Southfield's network, we ran several different scenarios, and the scenario that's shown here on the graph is to compare the proposed funding level against the kind of do-nothing alternative. So at the current funding level, maximizing every dollar that's available to the city to try and invest in the road network today, we would expect over a 10-year period that average network rating of 4.5 that I mentioned earlier would be on a slow trickle downward. You're not going to see the condition improve. You're going to see it slowly get downward. And really what's going to happen is a lot of those poor roads that are already nearing impassable are going to get that much harder and harder to pass, run into safety problems, et cetera. Whereas the $10 million, the proposal that's on the ballot, which is an average of about $10 million per year of investment into the roads, round numbers, we would hope that over a 10-year period we could see the average network condition of the roads improve or increase from about a 4.5 up to almost a 6.5. Similar to that scenario that I showed earlier for the city of Livonia about what their investment was. A couple of clarifications for that. The proposal here and the way that we run the models through the pavement management software, this is going to assume that the entire $10 million is put into maintaining the assets and the network that exists today. So it's not to do a lot of enhancements and add a lot of non-motorized or capacity improvements to relieve congestion or those kinds of things. It's really just the exact square footage or the exact miles of roads that are in the city today, trying to maintain that. If anything that would be above and beyond that as far as enhancement, theoretically would have to be different between money. There may be 2 slides in here that actually show this point, but so what does this mean to the average homeowner, average taxpayer in the city of Southfield? The average home value in Southfield, working with the assessor, identified as $84,000 per year. That would be a taxable value of about $42,000. And at the average millage rate that would be calculated over the period of bonds that was passed, it would be 2.58, which would yield about $108 per year to the average home in the city of Southfield. That's the investment we're talking about, is trying to improve the network of local roads. If that's passed, what can voters within the city of Southfield expect? I would expect that the overall condition and safety of roads within the Southfield to be increased. The city is going to continue to be in a better position to take advantage of federal funds or outside funds that are available. Most of the programs, like the ones that I mentioned earlier, where the city's been able to secure a lot of federal funds for Evergreen Road, they do require a match at the local level. It's really fortunate that Southfield's been able to find that money, but if you don't have the money in your own checkbook to be able to help pay for that match, you can't take advantage of those federal funds. So that is a critical thing to keep in mind. The routine maintenance on the roads should increase, so some of this money is just going to go into brand new asphalt or brand new concrete road, but it will be new rubber to seal the cracks, more pothole filling on roads that need that to keep them passable. So it's a general overall increase of maintenance. The obvious question I think everyone's going to want to know is, will my road get fixed? Will the road in front of my house, or the roads that I travel every day? I think it's important to note that an entire 10-year program has not been developed, and it would be pretty much impossible to try and develop a detailed program right now for the entire 10 years. What we have done working with the city is try to target areas of the city based upon other infrastructure that's expected to be going to add around, so we can maximize the investment with water or sewer projects that may be going on. So look at what roads are at a pacer rating that if we can put a couple more dollars in them today, we can extend the life. And we've kind of put the overall network into 2 categories. The category that's likely to be in phase 1 in the first 1 to 5 years of the program, and then the category that would be candidates for the second half of the program. And I'm sure when we look at this map a little more detailed, there's going to be some segments that are going to switch a little bit, but on a broad brush, this was the prioritization we presented. If people have more questions about this map, I think there's larger 11 by 17 versions within the room, and afterwards, ourselves and the city's engineering staff can answer more detailed questions about specific streets. So just a quick summary of some things that I think are key. These are actually question and answer that are printed directly in the mailer that went around to the city. How much will the tax rates increase? We just covered that a few slides ago. It's about $108 per year for the typical home. How will funding be used? It can only be used for road construction, maintenance, or repair. That's right in the bond language. 66 of those have been rated in poor condition. Some of that is going to go to taking those poor condition roads, which I'm sure are the ones that are most painful for people to drive every day, and reconstruct them, but not necessarily every dollar. Some of it's going to go towards maintaining those roads that are still in good condition. If the proposal is approved, which roads will be fixed first? Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself on the slide. We just talked about this with the map. We primarily identified the phase 1 and the phase 2 categories so that people can expect it. We're not in the phase 1, the current target is to get to that in the second half of the funding period. So why do local roads matter? More than 85% of citizens use local roads every day, and the freeways are important. The state always makes the point that the majority of the miles that are traveled in the state are on the freeways, but you can't get to and from any destination that you want to get to without driving over a local road, whether it's your house or your place of business. If you think about any path that you go through, you've got to traverse a local road. Having great roads within the city of Southfield should help attract business and have people, employers, want to locate within the city of Southfield. Michigan currently ranks vast among 50 states in funding for roads. We've been bottom for that for the last 50 years. Every $1 that we can put, this is a good point that's publicized in any of the road funding education, but it comes across that it's a lot cheaper to try and maintain a road that's already been built than to wait for it to be completely built. Back to your car analogy, if you can change the oil every 2,000 miles, it would be a lot cheaper than waiting for the car to completely die and buy a brand new vehicle. So roughly speaking, every dollar that we can invest in a road that's in that middle category, the fair category today, should save future dollars when that road completely fails and have to reconstruct it. Ultimately, roads are necessary to carry emergency vehicles to and from emergencies that may be happening within the city all over. Hopefully, people's driving experience is improved. As you drive down roads that are maintained, it's pretty irritating and frustrating when you're driving down some of the roads in the area today. I think some of the worst ones are getting back to the speed. Some are over in Greenfield and elsewhere, but I think it's important. I don't know, I think that probably covers the majority of them. People have further questions, and we'll open it up to Q&A.
Thank you, Red. We're going to open this up for questions and answers, but I want to just make a couple additional comments. On Tuesday, November 4th, 75 other communities within the state of Michigan will also have similar ballot questions in front of their voters. Locally, Farmington Hills and Royal Oak are both asking for a millage. Southfield elected to take the proposal to do a bond proposal. This proposal is very much, in some ways, an economic development initiative about protecting the values of our homes and our businesses. I think for a lot of us in this room, we read the papers daily, watch television, listen to the radio, and we hear what's happening at the federal level. We have a national government that has a large amount of debt. Recent articles have appeared that the Federal Highway Trust Program is going bankrupt and is being subsidized now by a U.S. federal government general fund. That's a general fund that really doesn't have money to put into the program. During my career, I watched this road issue play out going back to when Jim Blanchard was governor, and we just still haven't been able to get to what I would call a good public policy. We can ask the feds to do their part. I like the line about, freeways are important. They move large volumes, but they don't give us to our local residential, right to our homes. This proposal actually begins dealing with the individual residential streets in this community. The Virginias, the Avons, the Hollywoods, the Magnolias, each individual street, whether it's Cranbrook Sub or Magnolia Sub, it begins to tackle an issue that we haven't been able to get any type of response from either the feds or the state. And the reality is, when people are making decisions about where to locate their business or their home, infrastructure is one of those things that we're all quietly development of a new subdivision. We used a range of $450 to $600 for every linear frontage of the value of your infrastructure. So every one of us as a homeowner, if I have an 80-foot lot, I have, in essence, $48,000 worth of infrastructure: street, sidewalks, water, sewer, storm. Southfield is a community that's 50, 60, 70 years old in its land use pattern. This plan, we believe, is an opportunity for our residents of the community to empower itself and to take a leadership role and to ensure that Southfield will not go quietly into the night. And I'll point out, for a lot of us that watched Ferndale and Royal Oak from the late 80s and the 90s come about, in Ferndale in 1994 basically levied a 5.5 mil tax and did a very intense water rate study where they were adjusting their water rates. And what they were really focused on was rebuilding the local streets throughout the community, their water and sewer lines. All of this, is about protecting our values. I'd like to, our city assessor is here, the city treasurer is here. By charter, the city treasurer is responsible for the sale and issuance of any bonds. So we do have a microphone there in both of the aisles. But before we turn it over to the public, I'm going to ask Irv and my two elected officials, do you want to comment, or, okay. Irv, would you, Irv Lowenberg, Southfield City Treasurer.
I just want to add that the importance of, we're asking for permission to borrow doesn't mean that we're going to go ahead and borrow all $99 million, and it's not going to be done in one shot at all. It's only going to be in piecemeal, hopefully 3 or 4 pieces that we will be looking to possibly issue bonds, and we would only ask for and borrow for what we need. So even though we're asking for the larger amount, we're actually going to hopefully use a lot less than that. So it's up to that amount, and we'll hopefully be able to get as much grant money as possible and be able to, as was mentioned earlier, leverage these funds to get in additional money that will not have to be repaid by our taxpayers and to lighten our taxpayer burden. So that's our biggest goal, and that also it will increase the home values as well, and also increase the business values, so that it will make Southfield very attractive for business owners to want to be located here, as well as and that's the importance of fixing our roads, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. But and now we also have very favorable interest rates, and that makes it a very attractive time to be able to borrow the funds.
At this time, if folks have questions, if you can work your way up to the microphone, to the members of our resource team, Lee Schultz, city engineer, Greg Rondeville, Gary Trussell, Mike Radcliffe, the assessor, the treasurer, will do our best to answer those questions.
I understand that the property values are increasing after the fall in the market. Property values are starting to go up. So how much of an improvement, how much additional funding will that bring for the road? And is that looked at as something to offset the increase, the millage that you want?
Mr. Radcliffe, would you mind? I think I can answer it, but you're the assessor, so welcome.
You are correct. Property values are increasing. We're seeing neighborhoods as high as 40% this coming year. However, if you recall, under Proposal A, we operate under an assessed value and a taxable value, and the taxable value is capped at the rate of inflation. This year, the projected rate of inflation is only 1.6%. So even though we see the property values increasing, the actual increased revenue is limited.
With any new construction that you do, have you considered using higher quality cement? I know at one time, the state of Pennsylvania talked about their roads lasting so long because at the time they were using what they call the 3-bag mix, and everybody else is using the 2-bag mix to make
I'm going to let our engineers answer that. I will say that along 275, the state of Michigan is testing to various concretes, and when you drive southbound between like 8 and 6 Mile, where multiple cuts have been made, where different additives have been added. Most of what we spec in our projects today is what's consistent with the state, and I'm going to turn it over. Now I'm getting into dangerous territory, but either Red or Gary Trussell or Lee Schultz.
When you're talking about that, is possible that you also include Kansas Highway 401, as sections where they've done completely different types of concrete, rubber making for that?
Sure. I will say, generally speaking, what we use to make concrete hasn't changed all that much in hundreds of years that we've been making concrete. The primary ingredients are still the same. In the last several decades, there's been research to use different types of aggregates. There's a lot of pressure to try to use the green. We use a lot of recycled products in our mixes, so we use a lot of old pavement that's been ground up, and we use portions of that in both new asphalt and in new concrete pavement. And so a lot of the recent changes have been to try to make use of old products so that the whole process is, number one, cost effective, and number two, doesn't have a lot of waste. But at the same time, we need to make sure that doing that doesn't impact the durability and the longevity of the pavements. So as far as anything new, I mean, it's not like there's going to be a whole lot of revolutionary, completely new ideas that are brought forward. But looking at a lot of the failures that have occurred in the state of Michigan or in the region within the last 10 to 20 years, even projects that are going on as recent as this year, we've made adjustments in the specifications, the types of materials, the quality control testing, to make sure that we minimize primarily durability issues. What we've seen in recent years has been pavements that didn't last as long as we expected. Some of the examples you mentioned in Highway 401 in Canada, and I don't know as much about the Pennsylvania example specifically, but they've played with some of the economics. Generally speaking, we want to build a road with as much pavement as we can, but also at an affordable price. So we have this constant balance of I can put a lot more pavement down, a lot thicker concrete pavement, but am I going to get that life cycle cost out of it? Some of those pavements in Highway 401 specifically, they really chose from an investment standpoint to invest in a much, much deeper pavement stream, almost double what we may see. There are cost challenges to that. People see the, the price tag of the proposal today. If we were going to propose to build everything twice as big, the numbers would be that much more. So I don't know, I'm kind of answering your answer in a little bit of a roundabout way, but things are being continuously tweaked and changed. I don't see it being a completely revolutionary change. We've been using some different additives and some different things to try and make sure that the longevity is there primarily.
Along with the patching process, a lot of times they're putting down the asphalt and tapping it in. Why don't they use plate compactors to put it in so it's more compressed and will last longer? And that's just in repairs. I mean, I understand it's not going to last forever, but during the wintertime when you're doing patching, you tap it down by hand with a flat patcher. You can't put as much pressure on it as you can to cover better areas equally as a plate compactor. Why don't they use that when they're doing patching on the streets?
For maintenance, cold patching is typically done. The cold patch, the repair area is cleaned out, you try to get as much loose area out, and then put it in. And part of that is a little bit of a balancing of economics. I'm going to send maybe 2 people, 3 people, the DPW is not here to tell me the exact numbers, but I suspect 3 people on a crew with 1 truck and try and get them to cover as many miles in a day. Whereas if I'm going to have them bring out more pieces of equipment and put up a bigger closure, bring out a roller, and try and push that in, there is a cost associated with it. But generally speaking, the cold patch that's used, the idea is to just get it, get it in the hole, and then traffic actually pushes that in a little bit more. I know a few years ago, the city of Southfield invested in a Durapatcher product, which is actually a hot mix, and it's a better premium product that goes down. And depending on the size of the patch, I do believe they're bringing out mechanical equipment to roll those into place as well. So some of the bigger patch areas that have been done by city crews, not just outside contractors, I believe that's been the cold patch process is usually a quick hit, throw it in, and let traffic push it in the hole.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm not talking about changes in numbers in the crew. Generally, you have someone driving the truck, someone taking the asphalt, putting on the coal patch, putting it in the spot, and the other guy taking the tamper and beating it down. All I'm saying is take the tamper away from the guy and use a plate compactor to get it more even and down further into the hole to make it tighter to start with.
Maybe develop, you can have a talk a little bit further about it too.
Thank you very much.
Yes. My name, you request the name, my name.
No, your name is.
Oh, okay, Marcy and Sherman, President Southfield. Couple questions. The first one is, there was a lot of material, and I'm not sure if I missed this in the material. What is currently in the budget for road repair maintenance? What is currently in the current budget, or the budget for next year for road repair?
We have that in the slide.
Okay, what's the number?
Will this take me back, or? We currently have 2013 coming in from Act 51, 4.6 million, from our current local street levy, which is 2.1 million, and then Public Act 298, the Metro Act 471, interest grants is another 390, and then we transfer in from other funds in the city, and then using fund balance. For this year, we've got 13 million, 13.7 million. And you can see there's been a 5-year decline. The formulas that were written in Act 51 of Public Acts 1949 haven't really changed that much. As gas mileage improves, less comes into the cities. As the electric car comes online, less comes in to the city.
Okay, so you're saying 13.7 is the total?
Yeah, and that's for major and local roads.
Okay. Now, with the 99 million that you're asking, how much are you going to appropriate for road funding for the first year?
The bonds can be issued in series. So what's been envisioned is possibly 3 or 4 series of bonds. So the first year could be 3 years, could be 30 million, could be 35. 100% of these funds will go to the roads. The way the bonds are written, that these funds can only be used for roads.
What I'm trying to get an understanding of is how much you currently use for road funding, which you're saying is 13.7 million, correct, out of the budget? The annual budget?
Well, out of this year's budget, it's 13.7, but you have a total, it's been 14,208,209, and then we're currently,
Okay, and so for 2015, for next year, if this bond is passed, how much will you appropriate or ask for in the bond, if you're saying you're going to get it in segments? How much are you going to get for the first year?
I would probably estimate between 30 to 35 million, but that would be a 3-year budget. We look to get as much as done as we can. What we've seen with the PACER program, the quicker we can get this money into maintenance, the longer we preserve the life of the road. That was that slide for every dollar invested, we save, what was it, 6 later on? One of the objectives is to try to get this money into the road network as quickly as possible to make repairs, to preserve the life of this. For a lot of us, you equate this to your roof. Every year you go up, you clean your gutters out, you check your flashing out on your roof, around your fireplace, and you make sure that it's nice and tight. If you don't do that year after year, eventually you're probably going to have an issue and probably end up replacing the whole road, or the whole roof. If you do this maintenance as you go, you can preserve the life of the road network. And that's part of the objective, is there hasn't been enough money for maintenance. And it's also clear that the state hasn't given the local communities enough money for that maintenance.
Okay, so now you're saying about 30 million.
And that could be a 2 to 3 year period.
3 year period, okay. The 13.7 that you appropriated for 2013, how much was it for and that was 2013 and 14. So what's going to happen with the budgeted money that you have?
These funds will stay here. There will essentially be a project accountant, because these are bonds, the $99 million. As each series, we will have to account for those where that money was spent on individual projects. This money will continue to stay in the budget.
For what? What will that money?
Pardon?
What will that money?
Well, that money covers the maintenance of the roads, salting, plowing, doing the patching we do today. Some of it covers debt service for existing bonds.
Okay.
Okay, but the money, I think it's important that people know that the funds there'll be a segregated accounting, and they'll be accounted for as the investments are made.
Okay, thank you. I've got another couple questions. If the city can provide tonight for this meeting, how much has been generated to the city or the general fund from tax abatements for the last 17 years?
How much, can you repeat the question?
How much has been generated to the city or the general fund from tax abatements for the last 17 years?
I don't have that number, but I'll make a statement about tax abatements. As a matter of economic development policy, on numerous occasions I have said in this chamber to the city council, in a perfect world we wouldn't have tax abatements. We would subsidize stadiums and ice arenas and all of the other things. But we know it's not a perfect world. Across the country, we compete for businesses making location decisions. For the last 10 years, the city has worked a policy in economic development, keep our buildings full. By keeping our buildings full, and keep in mind the commercial tax base of the city of Southfield's tax base, 2/3 of it is commercial. So the high rises, the retail, those entities are picking up 2/3 of the cost of operating the cost of this government. In keeping the buildings full, in keeping those stores full, we lessen and weaken their arguments on tax appeals. So that has been our strategy. The reality is, and I was just speaking to a group, we cannot control the rent on a piece of office space in this community. That is a private sector function. But folks, we are competing against other communities, and communities where the owners of the building will come in, and I have seen and witnessed other people knocking on the doors of our tenants in our high-rises here and saying, we'll build your space, give us a 10-year lease, we'll charge you nothing, your only cost will be the build-out of the space. We compete very aggressively. City of Southfield is safe, clean, has no income tax, and parking is free. And we play every card we can. So we do our best, but yes, we have granted tax abatement. City Council goes through an awful lot of very painful deliberation. Every case is weighed on a case-by-case basis, but it's always, one of the objectives, keep these buildings full.
I have one last question, and this one is for Mr. Radcliffe, Professor. You indicated that the rate of inflation is 6% or 1.6%. Okay, 1.6%. Okay. My question is, my understanding is when a sale takes place in Southfield or anywhere in Michigan, per the state law, that uncapping occurs the following year. Is that correct? Okay. So that being the case, how many homes in the last 2 years have been uncapped based on sales that would uncap the property, therefore generate a much higher revenue stream for the city of Southfield?
I haven't run the numbers in regards to number. I know before the market's now increasing, we were averaging probably between 15 to 2,000 a year before the real downturn, as far as transactions and transfers. However, you have to keep in mind that under Proposal A, under Headley, any taxing authority, the city, the county, the schools, cannot bring in any more money than the rate of inflation. So even though those are increasing in value because they got it capped, the amount of revenue that any taxing authority can bring in can be no more than the rate of inflation. So if we do bring in $1 more than the rate of inflation, the millage rate has to be rolled back, so that the actual dollar revenue coming in is only the rate of inflation.
So the uncapping doesn't matter then?
Well, I mean, it matters to the individual that's being uncapped, but from a revenue source, that's correct.
Okay.
The amount of revenue that we can capture under state law is for new construction. In other words, if you build a new house, you have to provide fleet service for that new house. So that, if you will, that revenue can be captured and kept. So those services that need to be added is an increase.
Okay, so if it matters for the individual taxpayer, we'll take an example. If just say taxable value is $50,000. And it's sold, and say that house was 10 years old, it hadn't changed hands for 10 years, instead of getting uncapped, it's gonna go back, and the taxable value would be calculated based on the 10-year period that passed, is that correct?
Not necessarily. You have to understand that during this downturn in the market, overall in Southfield, the average assessment went down approximately 44% since 2007. The average taxable day went down 34% since 2007. So even though we had a gap, during that downturn, the assessments went down, hit that taxable value, and lowered them together. So until that market recovers and you see that gap, all right, you're not going to see that.
But then you start a new base again.
You have a new base, that's correct.
Right, you have a new base, and then it's gonna increase based on, as you say, the rate of inflation, or the total cap value rate. I think there's
5%
5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower.
Correct.
Okay. So that is generating additional revenues, though.
Theoretically, it is, yeah.
Because their taxes are going up.
Yeah, for that
If the
individual.
taxes are going, it has to create additional revenues.
But remember that from last year's value, total revenue, to this year's total revenue can only be the rate of inflation. Period. That's all we can capture. So anything above that, theoretically, the millage rate must be reduced.
And that growth, the millage rate on the bond proposal would decrease because of that growth, because of Headley. You can't bring in any new money. So with that new growth, we want the growth to happen. For all of us in this room, for a lot of us, the measure of our personal net worth is in our home. So I want my home to go up. So if our homes go up in value, and you've got the protection of Proposal A, Headley will begin to roll that millage down. Instead of the average home having an assessment of 2.58 mils, it'll start to roll down in very tenths of a percent.
Okay, and one quick last question. Thank you. Once this bond proposal, if it is passed and it goes into effect, how long will it be? Well, is this a permanent change in our taxes, or how long will this period go on?
This is dedicated strictly for the road bonds. As far as these are going to be issued, typically the average is going to be 11 years, and as soon as they're paid off, then the bond millage gets eliminated. And so that is something that strictly is dedicated for the bonds, and as soon as the bonds are paid back, it's like a loan, like a mortgage on a house. As soon as you pay off your mortgage, you don't owe the bank any more money. So as soon as we pay off this is our mortgage for roads, for the last part. As soon as we pay this off, then we're free and clear, and the roads will have a useful life of approximately 25 to 30 years. That's what we're expecting to have.
So in the short
Okay,
term.
also, I'm sorry to jump in, but, sorry to interrupt you, but, going back to the previous question regarding the tax, increases in taxable values and things like that, one of the things I wanted to also emphasize is that the rate of inflation, 1.6%, remember also that the cost of doing business as a city, our expenses go up every year by the rate of inflation as well, sometimes even more than that. As there's more and more construction going on, the cost of construction materials can possibly rise even 5% or 10% even. So the costs for the city, we try to do everything we can. We've trimmed our expenses by about 40% citywide. We've trimmed over hundreds of positions, all through attrition. We've done as much discipline financially as possible in the city, but ultimately the cost of materials is going to go up and the cost of doing business goes up as well. I mean, we've gone without an increase in salaries for approximately 7 to 8 years. Citywide, every employee has not had this, an increase. And so we're doing the disciplines and belt tightening as much as possible. The other thing also is, in terms of taxable values increasing, the only, as Mr. Ackland mentioned earlier, that the only way you can increase your tax base is through new construction. And the problem that we have is we're a fully developed city, we're a mature city, so there isn't that much room for new construction to really happen. So we don't have these vast open spaces to be able to grow our tax base higher. So the only way, as new people buy houses, it actually lightens the burden on the existing homeowners. So everyone that's a Southfield resident right now, you are protected. So even though the houses may be jumping by 20, 30, 40% in value around you, you're protected. That the most that they can raise your taxes by is the 1.6%, which is important, and that's your protection. Also, one other point that Councilman Kukowski mentioned is our personal property tax. Since we have 2/3 of our tax base is business-related, we received about 14% of our tax base was personal property taxes. With the pressure that we're facing now in the state of Michigan to eliminate personal property tax, that reduces our taxes that we take in as a city as well. So that's an important point as well. And also our property tax appeals, we fight them diligently, but they also take a burden on the city as well. Sir, your name?
Good evening. You said the message doing, right? Been about 9 months? Glad to meet you. My name is Charlie Jones. I'm precinct delegate 18 elected Southfield. I was fascinated by the first two residents that came up and discussed. A lot of the answers has been taken care of, but 99 million. Why do you ask for 100 million? I mean, what they asked 100? How do you get that figure? Do you have surplus? Why did you stop at 99 million? Why did you just ask for 100 million? I mean, is that enough to cover for the next 11 years? What you're saying is, if this is passed, you know, which we didn't have enough time, I hope you guys would have went to protocol and went to the state and failed first to see how much money we really need. Yes, our roads need fixed, but like me, I'm gonna fix that up. I need my surplus in my pocket too, and I also would like our city to have what they need, just what they need, not a surplus. Now, from my understanding, looking at this bond, you're gonna take 2.58 mils for the next 11 years. You know, and if something come in, you might, you know, get something back, which I know we always, somebody else always have another problem somewhere where we, you know, but why did you ask for 11 years bond? Why did you ask for lower, like 4 years? There's no protocol. They asked for 11 years instead of 4 or 5 years for bond. Can anybody answer that for me?
The answer is we did some polling. We surveyed over 200 people, and after going through the polling, it was decided to put the question at 99 million. We knew in order to get our roads in good shape, and you saw the PACER scores earlier, that the objective is constantly, on an annual basis, to be reinvesting in your roads. And we know from what other cities have done in using that model, we can take our roads from that lower rating of the poor into a good rating status. but it begins by making an annual constant investment throughout the city and preserving and maintaining what we have today. But I hope that answers your question.
Well, one more. One more. Well, I'm an old man. I'm forget what I'm going to say. We collecting money now, right now. But it's not coming in fast enough. Like you just said, we spent about $7 million on roads. All right, now with this bond, you break that down over 11 years, that's close to $8 million more. So that's 7 and 8, that's about $15 million. Am I right?
There would be another, depending upon the year, there could be 8 to 10 million additional each year being invested in Car Road. The number up there, that should stay constant. We still, out of those numbers, we have to plow our streets, we have to cut the grass, we have to maintain those right-of-ways, we have to sweep our streets, we have to do some repair out of that.
Okay, all right, then let me ask you this. You got $15 million coming in. Let's sold my house. When I came into Southfield 15 years ago, my house was worth double from what it is now. It's cut in half. All right, well, the next time you're supposed to get back like that. Now, you got $15 million coming in now. You have something like about $40 million if it goes up. And I know somebody going to say, no, we ain't getting that money back. We'll keep this surplus for a rainy day. You did that once before. I know you weren't here. I can't blame you, Mr. Manager. You weren't here. And the other guy, I can't blame it on him either. I laughed because he was excellent. He was excellent. But I'm not gonna hold that. I can get other people.
I just want to actually go back to answer your previous question. Why 11 years? 11 years is the sweet spot of financing bonds in terms of road funding. Bonds are issued to banks, to investors, and typically, depending on how long you borrow money for, similar to a house mortgage, you see 30-year mortgages, 15-year mortgages, 10-year mortgages. So depending on the length of time that you borrow money for is how long and how your interest rate is going to affect so we were able to actually go back to previous bonds that we issued, we were able to refinance them and get much better attractive rates. For example, we ended up getting 2 times in the last 3 years approximately. We've refinanced bonds that we had issued previously. We were able to get 1.7, I believe it was, 1.8% interest rate, and we just did it a few months ago with the council's permission. We were able to get 2.15, which was a very attractive rate for 11 years. And that was, the bank stepped up, and we have a very good credit rating, and they now find us to be a very safe credit risk, and that's how we're able to get very attractive interest rates.
That move and being able to refinance, we had a road bond issued 6 years ago. It was a 10-year bond. We were able to refinance that bond and get better terms. That money is actually the money that we are using to pay for the Evergreen Road, both 8 to 9 mile, the 10 to 11 mile, the Northwestern Service Drive, which will be done next year, 8 to 9 mile. Our part of Greenfield, we were fortunate that we were able to leverage that money. Had we not had that money to leverage, we would not have had the money to match the federal grants, and would not have been able to bring in the federal grants. And one of these shows us this year, those dollars that we were able to put in there match this. Next year we have Northwestern Service Drive. We're even doing things like the service drive from Berg Road, southeast to Evergreen. Federal funding has been made available to us. The funds will be in October of 2016. We know that if we can advance those funds, we can preserve the base of that road a little bit longer. If we wait till the funds are actually available, the job will ultimately cost the taxpayers more money. So we're really trying to leverage every dollar. I wish we were the city of Troy, who was able to take $10 million out of its fund balance of $28 million. Our fund balance right now is only $2.3 million. We are looking to build that up. So our general fund, rainy day fund, is not, the experts would like us to have 15% on a $60 million budget out for the general fund. I'd like to have a reserve of $9 million. We don't have that. You know, when I drive through Troy, you know, how are they doing this? And I find out, well, they took $10 million out of their general fund balance to pay for that. That's not a luxury we have.
I just wanted to jump in also. I mean, the numbers may seem big to you. You may be looking at millions and millions of dollars being spent currently, but you have to realize we're talking about approximately 240 square miles, 244 linear miles of road.
That each mile costs, each mile of concrete, we used to figure about $1.5 million for 1 lane, 1 mile. Asphalt, we could go in and build and refill a one lane, 1 mile, about $750,000. So again, preserving the life of that road is how we protect our taxpayers.
These dollar amounts, this has been able to just put Band-Aids on the roads. We've been patching and repatching all winter long, and we keep getting phone calls, there's a pothole there, and we keep sending crews out. We have 3 crews going at the same time to attack these roads, but unfortunately, it's putting Band-Aids on the situation. What we need is a real fix, and that's what this bond Millage is going to do, is put a real fix on these roads to get a permanent repair that we don't have to constantly, we can save manpower, instead of having to have them on the road patching, they can actually do productive projects, and that's what I'm always.
Sir, your name?
My name is Mark Stasek, and I want to address that particular thing about the permanent repair. I don't think anybody in here would disagree with me that we've all seen new concrete roads laid down in Southfield and crumbling within a year. How do you guys determine who does the work? Is it low bid?
I'm going to turn that question over to Gary Trussell from HRC. And if, Gary, if you could address warranties and the control measures in place. And let's have a frank discussion about Greenfield, because I think that's a great example of a road, a county road, lasted 7-8 years, and we're rebuilding it right now.
The concrete roads that you're referring to, I would imagine would be Greenfield Road and...
Not just Greenfield.
Or wherever it might be. What the area has seen, starting in the mid-90s, was a reduction in the quality of sands, that are available. A lot of those sands came out of the inletting pits and those kinds of things. And what we found is they were reacting with the cements. So it causes a reaction which then takes the air and fills the air with the gelatin, because of the moisture and all that stuff, and makes it crack. Very technical stuff, but since the mid-90s, we've been paying attention to what's called ASR. That's probably the biggest deterioration factor that you're seeing in concrete pavement. But beyond that, Brett's point about getting these joint seals and all that is very, very critical to the life of this pavement. Getting them clean, getting the rocks out of them, getting the water out of them, and keeping the water out of them during the middle of winter, so that when it freezes, it doesn't expand, doesn't blow the joint apart at the top, and then you're back there trying to do patches, to fix those joints. What have we done? We've been working with various industry people, your own private geotechnical consultants, to come up with a better cake mix, if you will. And we think we're at that. Our firm right now is watching Evergreen Road out front, Rex is watching the South Mile. But both of us we share information frequently, on many projects and working with Lee and that type of stuff. But the concrete that you have today is not concrete from the 1930s, It's all made different, it's all made with a different composition. As Brett may have referenced, there's a big push. When you take these federal dollars and these state dollars, there's certain guidelines that come with it. There's certain strings, And they say, recycle, do these types of things. We say, we'll recycle, but we're going to change the cake mix a little bit, from what you want to be better for Southfield. And we're doing that. We're doing that in your specifications right now, and we're also monitoring that much more closely, both at where it's produced and where it's placed, so that we don't have problems with concrete roads, So Is it a perfect world? No, it's not, because you can test and test and test, but we have a full-time person in the plant. Every minute that plant is making a cubic yard of concrete for the city of Southfield. We have a full-time tester on the project, making sure that the right air mix that's out here is getting on the ground, okay? So those are the provisions that we are trying to do, and we're increasing the air a little bit, make it more durable. Michigan is not like the state of Florida. The state of Florida, 4 inches of asphalt on the seashells and no freeze thaw, and I mean, it lasts forever, you know? Up here, we have freeze thaws. Worst time is between 35 degrees and 25 degrees, okay? So in the daytime, it could, at night, it could start at 25 degrees and rise to 35. That's a freeze thaw cycle, okay? If it goes down below 25 and stays down below 25, it's better for your pavement. Okay? Southfield is predominantly clay with high moisture. So these pavements are moving around, okay, out there. And the state of Michigan allows very heavy loads. Okay? Whether you know it or not, it's probably one of the higher states in the United States for loads. They have a very strong lobbyist in the state capital. Okay? Gross vehicle weight, 77 tons. Gross axle weight, 18 tons per axle. Okay? All of those things, we're designing different joints. We're designing thicker pavements. We're looking at trying to get 25, 30 years. What everybody here is talking about is these pavements that everybody has in their local streets are 50 to 60 years old in some cases. They're still servicing you, and they need to have some attention. Some of them will be serviceable with patches. Some of them are beyond serviceable, and they need to be overlaid, or they need to be removed and replaced, okay? That's the whole analysis that's going on in this whole process. But if you don't start to fix these roads, what you have today is going only down. Okay? It's not coming back because there's not enough funds for 244 miles of roads to be touching those, but about every 40 years, 50 years. You're already 40 or 50 years into them. They're not going to last another 40 or 50 years if there's no money.
But the whole point is the point I'm trying to make is that I think many of us don't have the feeling that the road surfaces you're putting down are adequate to begin with. And I'm wondering too, who guarantees the road? You put it out for bid, I would assume, and how do you determine who gets the bid? Do you hold them accountable? How do you hold them accountable?
Let me go through the two processes. The city has a local bidding program, and it's normally awarded to the low bidder, as it is with MDOT. MDOT has a pre-qualification where they have people that are qualified to do certain types of work, whether it be concrete, asphalt, underground utilities, or whatever that case may be. When MDOT gets a low bid, that's off of one of their list of qualified people to do that type of project, they're going to insist that that be awarded to that contractor, okay? Then becomes the goal of HRC and OHM and the consultants that work for the city to hold that guy's feet to the fire to make sure that it's done right and in accordance with the specifications. The city has, from the date of final payment, a 2-year maintenance and guarantee bond for defects caused by the contractor, okay? That's what that maintenance and guarantee bond is. If you want to put a warranty, we've had discussions about warranties on projects, okay, that could go 3 years, 5 years, like 275, that's the big one everybody knows about. You're going to pay for that, okay? And what's the likelihood if you pay, let's say on 275, that was a $100 million project, and the contractor builds in $5 million for the next 5 years to come back and address anything? What's the likelihood that in the first 5 years that there's going to be a $5 million problem? It's just like going to the Sears store and buying a brand new stove, and they want to sell you a policy. They make more money off of the policies they sell you than selling you the device, okay? So the likelihood of that road to fail in the first 5 years is pretty low, okay? It can happen, and some contractors have had to return and make repairs. But the reality of it is that there's got to be an analysis. It's a Contractors are not in the business of giving away their money, so if you want that, that's something you've asked for, and it's gonna be put in the bid, okay? And you're gonna pay for it, okay? So certainly you can do that, but there's risk management that has to be done to decide if you want that warranty to cover the first 5 years. Ideally, it would be the next 10 years. That's where the problems are gonna start to show up. Okay, it's not the first 5, but nobody's gonna give you a warranty for a 15-year service life on a pavement without charging you for it. So to your answer, you do have a M&G bond, maintenance guarantee bond, for defects of construction caused solely by the contractor. It's not to come back out and fix a plow that hit the curb. It's not to come back out and fix something that a gas company comes out and digs a hole and causes a patch that falls apart or any of that other stuff. It's only for defects caused by his workmanship. I don't know if I've answered your question adequately or not, but nothing is free in life.
Well, you have, but I get the feeling, well, first of all, as I understand it, what you're saying is that the roads we have today are not as good as the roads that existed in the 30s. Is that correct?
Yeah, roads back in the 30s were made with dolomite that was hauled down from up north and to much stronger aggregate. And in today's world, you're using locally available aggregates, you're recycling concrete out of pavements and stuff like that. Those are not dolomite kind of limestone. They're not. They're not as strong, they're not as hard. If you want to do that, there's very few places that would do that, and they're normally test tracks. It's the Ford Motors, the Generals, the Motors, the Chryslers that say, I only want dolomite limestone. Okay? Because I want to build this feature and I want to make it run for the next 50 years. Okay? And I want to make sure that it doesn't cost me the money. I'm not worried about the money. I want that feature to stay exactly like it is, so that every time I run a car over it, whatever my vibrations are, whatever my noise is, whatever my twist in the vehicle is, it's exactly the same for the next 50 years. And they'll spend that extra money. A city like Southfield, where I don't think you have the funding available with 240 miles to be starting to spend possibly double what it costs a normal road paving job in order to go to that level of pavement for everywhere in the city. I'm just being frank of what I think, it's my opinion, but it's a huge thing. You've gotten 50 years plus on a lot of your local roads. I mean, in most places, that's tremendous. These concrete pavements have a service life of 25 to 30 years, maybe 40 years if it's on the right sand base or whatever the case may be. You're beyond that service life, well beyond that service life. So the service life is expired, and it's still servicing you. And the question is how much longer will it service you before it fails? And if you don't start to address those issues by going in and doing preventive maintenance, doing mid-level maintenance overlay, or doing deep maintenance, removing and replacing, you will not get ahead of the curve. I think that's what everybody here is saying. Your pavements, your subdivisions, there's no federal fund for a local road. It has to be funded by the local people, okay? But you're being asked to fund. I can tell you, in my personal situation, my road was rebuilt, I paid $17,000 to have it done, okay? Through an SAD, with no city funds, no federal funds, no nothing, okay? That was the way our city chose to rebuild their roads, okay? And whether I supported it or not, that was what the mass of the people said, and that's what got done, okay? So, what are you being asked to pay? $110 for 15 years, or $1,500, or whatever that case may be? I'll sign up today.
The only thing is as I indicated, you're talking about roads that are 50 years old, but we're all seeing roads that are falling apart in 2 years.
A lot of the roads that you may be seeing an issue, a surface issue with, they're probably open projects yet with the city. Okay, if it's a city project, I know we have a couple of issues on a couple of the projects we're involved with, and the contractor's still actively involved, and he's gonna fix it before it's final out, okay? The other roads, like Greenfield Road, or whatever the case may be, you know, that's not our road, we weren't involved with it, it was the road commission. Lee, you can probably speak much better to that than me, but it was poured in a hot time of the year. Did it hydrate out, or does it doesn't have ASR, or whatever the case may be, it has failed, and it's unserviceable. So, it needs to be replaced. Unfortunately, it was the Southfield side, it wasn't the Oak Park side, okay? Oak Park gets a free, you guys get to fix whatever that issue was when that concrete got placed. But there's nobody in this room that was involved with that project, okay? Unfortunate? Absolutely.
Well,
Like to be seen, like to be have happen in the industry, as a person that works in the industry, don't like it, okay? But those things do happen, and corrective action, Fred is absolutely right. We've had a discussion on roads and what to do and not do, and where do developers go when they look at sites like the city of Southfield, or the city of Troy, or Farmington Hills, or Novi, or wherever they're going. What's critical is the people are maintaining their neighborhoods, the major roads are being maintained, the infrastructure is being maintained, and if they have to make a choice of one that is maintained and is kept up, or one that is not, they're going to go with the one that is, to make their investments. I can tell you that because I do it for a living with my other hat.
well, and I say, you know, we all understand that the roads have to be maintained. The question is whether a good enough job is being done in supervising the work. I can't speak to Greenfield, and I understand it's a county road, but I do know that I live on Pier Street, and you pave the strip from 12 miles for about 6 blocks north, and it fell apart in 2 years. And you ended up, you patched it, and you did this, and you did that. It was in terrible condition. Finally, this last year, you laid asphalt over it.
I can't speak to that because again, our firm wasn't involved with it, okay, but
I don't
again,
what I
I can appreciate what you say, but a lot of times, it's the patching of a project versus the total replacement, and what everybody in this room has to understand is this is clay underneath these pavements. Clay swells when it gets wet, and then when you drive a truck on it, it breaks. It don't matter, it'll break eventually based on heavy loads, okay? And so, how do you fix it? When you go in to fix a road, you've got to try to address the drainage. You've got to try to get a fixed section to get it put back, and make sure that that road section will give you a serviceable life. That serviceable life, the goal of all the designers, like an asphalt road, is 15, maybe 20 years, okay? But that doesn't mean that you pave it and you don't do anything for 15 or 20 years. It means that at the end of 15 or 20 years, you're doing something to it again, unless you're proactive, sealing joints, doing the things that are supposed to be being done. But during that 15 or 20 years, you have to be maintaining those roads. It's just like changing the oil in your car, or buying new tires, or whatever the case may be.
Your name, sir? I'm Greg Miles. I was just wondering, how will the bond issue affect the city's ability to meet local match requirements? You might have already touched upon it, but it just was a little bit confusing to me.
It is our intent on new grants to leverage these funds as much as possible. If there's, and I'll use, for example, last night, City Council approved your automotive company moving into the former GTE location. It's our intent to submit a grant request to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, Michigan Department of Transportation. A grant, these funds will give us money to leverage those dollars. Right now, one of our challenges is when these grant opportunities come along, we don't always have the match. So in having these monies, we'll be able to match those other federal opportunities. If you recall one of the earlier slides, though, there are very few of our roads that are eligible for federal aid. About, how many, you know that?
get it.
Not all of our,
83 miles
uh,
of which 83 and 65.
not all of our roads are eligible for federal aid. The street in front of your home, the Potomac, the Virginia, the Avon, those streets aren't eligible for federal aid. It's the major roads that are eligible. So yes, it's our intent to leverage every federal dollar and state dollar that we can. We will continue to go after state economic development funds from both MDOT and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Is there, your name, sir?
Hi, my name is Harold Hill, and we're discussing back here. I think it's on 2017.
Okay.
We were discussing, what if they try to use another agent besides salt? I know salt is cheap, and everybody wants to sue if the roads aren't taken care of, and calcium chloride is probably really expensive. But some communities use salt, and that definitely causes a problem with the road. Just using the salt itself. Like, is there any other plan to look at that?
The answer is yes, we do occasionally experiment with different items. We use beet juice. I don't know if we use calcium chloride. Right off the top, I don't know that. But we have, working with Oakland County Road Commission and other Act 51 authorities, looked at different additives and mixtures to our salt. It's not, we use salt, we use beet juice, we use different components. And from time to time, there's a lot of experimenting going on. And we pretty much let the County Road Commission take that lead because they simply have far more resources. But we are always open to experimenting and doing certain things. And I would say, that level of plowing and snow removal, these bond proceeds will not be used for that. That type of expenditure will be covered in our annual budget out of this money right here. But if you're aware of something, we're always looking to send people to training and conferences. We're always looking for a better mousetrap.
Well, we were back there, we were just talking, and I was saying that it's thinking that it's going to be a pretty rough winter this year. And I was just thinking that there's got to be a better way that you can save money by doing research on finding out what kind of chemicals you can place on the roads to be able to save money in the future. And save the road. I worked back on Ballot, and they got out of the industry because they found out that not only were they tearing up the roads, they were tearing up the cars that they made parts for. So they just got out of that industry itself. Painted.
We will continue to look at alternatives and other options.
Okay.
Okay. Any other, sir?
Tony Warren. Two questions. You mentioned that there were bond issues that existed already for the roads. What type of bonds, or what areas have bonds? Bond is road bond. Road project is funded by bonds.
I can't speak to all the ponds that are out there, but I can say that when the interchange was built on 696 at Franklin Road, that was a bonded program for the city, portions of the city's funds, okay? That I know of for sure, okay, that was a bonded program. I think those are still being paid off.
I apologize, I don't have the full list. And it's a short list. The city actually currently has very little bonded indebtedness. I mean, our bonding capacity is very high because we hardly tapped any bond money out there. We used about $13 million, I believe, over time, and which would pay back the majority of that money already. So there's only a small portion that was remaining from the original. So we've got road-wise, I think the project Gary mentioned, that was what we just partially refunded. That freed up another $4.5 million so we could provide the match for the current projects and the couple projects next year. And then the only other debt is the library.
Right.
So,
And typically, if there's a large amount of bonds that we're asking, that's why it requires voters' approval. And that's why we're coming to the voters to get permission to be able to borrow the funds.
Okay, you said Headley limited the increase 1.6% for this year. Does this millage impact, is that impacted by Headley or separate? Because your documents, your documents say that it's $108, you know, on your presentation, $108 per household for a year.
Correct.
Well, if Headley's going to limit that, is that considered, or is this separate and above?
But what we look at is the taxable value of a property. And the taxable value determines what your actual home impact is going to be on what your portion of the bond payment is going to be. So we took the average home in Southfield, we looked at all the taxable values, and we came up that it's approximately an $88,000 home value, which is $44,000 taxable value. And then we multiplied it by the 2.58, which translates to approximately $9 a month or $108 for the year. So that's how, and that's going to be, and if, let's say, for example, the following years, it goes up by 1.6%, it means it will go up by approximately, it'll go to $110 the following year potentially. But even then, if the whole city as a whole goes up, it'll actually even bring down, it'll reduce the burden on the previous homeowners. If new homeowners are coming in and paying higher tax rates, it'll actually drop down the longer grandfathered in residents. Because as a city, citywide, we can only go up by 1.6% as the city assessor mentioned earlier. Headley, there's two things to keep in mind. That's where it gets very confusing when it comes to taxes. Every time I try to explain this, people's eyes start rolling. But there are two major protections that homeowners have, and it affects the city because it limits us and what we can do. There's proposal A, which says that each homeowner is protected, that the most it can go up is the rate of inflation, or 5%, whichever is lower than that. But then citywide, we also have Headley. Headley means citywide, 1.6 is the citywide limit. So if we have a whole bunch of new homeowners that come in, then we don't give you the full 1.6 impact. We'll end up reducing it down potentially because we can't, we can only go up citywide by that 1.6. It gets confusing, but.
So in essence, no matter what your home value is, the only amount that your taxes will increase is 1.6%.
Correct.
Maximum.
That's good.
So the $108 is, in essence, overstated.
The 108.
Based on the.
See, what you're protecting on is taxable value.
No, I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that you use just the figures that show us an example. And in essence, you're saying that the maximum, even with the 2.5% millage, the maximum that you can increase the property, the tax is 1.6, and that's based on the circumstances, like you say, if the city goes, the value of other houses goes up, then the amount goes down and all that.
One important factor also I wanted to point out, 2/3 of our tax base comes from commercial property. And so, to a certain extent, you as voters are having the opportunity to, you're putting the bigger burden really on the business owners, really. They're going to be shouldering a majority of the cost of these roads. And they're providing all our residents the opportunity to be able to have these roads fixed as well, but they're going to be shouldering the bigger burden of this road cost.
So you're saying that Headley doesn't impact the corporations, it's just...
It impacts everybody.
Oh, okay.
But overall, as a tax base, you know, I mean, the average two-thirds comes from outside of the, so they are lightening the burden for our homeowners, and they pay citywide for all the things that we have, all our police, fire.
We're going to take two more questions then, and your name?
Pamela Darrow. I think most of the people in here know me and have known me for quite a few years. I just want to say that passion has no address, and neither does advocacy. I go all over several counties giving my voice.
Question?
The question, well, I want to make some comments first.
Your question?
I'm going to make some comments and then I'll follow up with my question. And I don't really want to argue this pretentious relationship here, because you've allowed people to just kind of go with the flow, so allow and respect me to do the same thing, okay? You know, this city has made, in my opinion, a lot of bad business decisions. You told the people in 2011 that if that millage didn't pass, you were going to lay off police and fire. What you didn't tell the residents was police and fire took a lot of concessions, and they still have not been restored. You've got people working in this city that have been here for 12 to 20 years that have not had a raise. Now, I've heard you say, and the man from Hubbell, and Clark, that the expenses for the city and the cost of construction and materials have increased. The cost of living has increased. But yet you have not given these people that work here a raise for them to pay the cost of living increases. I just find that very disingenuous. You also talked about the guy from Hubbell, and Clark, that doing the roads is like baking a cake. Livonia, Troy, and nobody seems to be baking, along with West Bloomfield Hills, better cakes than Southfield has made. And you guys are trying to pass off to the people that these roads just got like this in the last 3 to 5 years before Mayor Lawrence came into office. Under the previous administration, these roads have been terrible. You also just talked about the trucks breaking down the roads. Why isn't it not a SAR imposed on the truckers for the weight of the road, for the weight that they're putting on these roads? And you said that the businesses pay 2/3 of the taxes. I don't doubt that. But what you haven't said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because respectfully, I always stand to be corrected. When you talk about Proposal a business owner of a building only pays that percent of taxes based on the occupancy. Is that true?
No.
Under Proposal A?
They pay on the assessed evaluation.
So if a building is 30% occupied, what percent taxes do they
They
pay?
pay on, if the property is taxable, is equivalent value, what if the property is the value. They have the right to appeal their property values, as does an apartment owner, an individual homeowner. They have the right to appeal their assessments. So, but under Proposal A, what they pay is what the property is assessed at. Proposal A protects them at 5% in inflation, not to exceed 5%. But, so your question is, do they pay, if they're only, no, your question was, if they're only 30% occupied, do they only pay 30% of their assessment? No, they pay their full assessment.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
Is
Here's another question. If the taxable values in the city continue to decrease, would you have to levy more or load more for the bonds to make up for the payment? If the taxable value continues to go low, would you have to levy more taxes to be able to make the bond payment?
The answer is we are capped at $99 million.
That wasn't the
In the
question.
50-year history of this city,
I'm not talking about the history. The question was, if the taxable value continues to decrease, would more taxes be levied on the people to make the bond payment? That is a yes or a no, followed up with an explanation. Is it true? And will the payment go up? That's the question.
you have lost 40% of your value. If the millage rate, if assessments were to crash and burn and have a huge decline again, there would probably be, yes, a millage increase to correspond with what's necessary to cover the debt service. If assessments are lowered, there would be an increase.
So, ultimately, let's say, for example, you saw a millage increase in 2011, we had a millage vote. If you take that increase in the millage that we went to the voters for, and the voters approved, with 83% of the voters approving that.
They were duped and
And you may think so, but ultimately, we're all working, as you had said, for so many years without an increase, and you want to raise salaries, how do you expect that money to come from?
But you guys have had pay increases at 6%, and these employees that work here have not had pay increases. You hired a city planner, and after 6 months of the job, he got a 6% raise. What about the people that's been working here for 20 years that have not had a raise? And they can't raise their family and do what they need to do at home because their money hasn't been right.
Our first priority, first of all, is
Should be the employees that work here.
is to preserve jobs and not to lay off a single individual. Our previous city manager, was dedicated to
You say that with a lot of pride. You've lost people through attrition because these people got tired of you guys playing politics and they went ahead and retired so they would lose anything else.
I really want to keep this topic to the roads.
It's all encompassing.
It's
It's all encompassing.
It's not all encompassing. The focus of this town hall is about the roads. Let me make this comment. You made the comment that we made poor business decisions. As the treasurer stated, if we gave the raises, part of what's been right-sizing this ship has been through attrition as people retired. We laid no one off. You're correct when you say our employees haven't had raises in 68 years. As city administrator, that doesn't make me happy, and it doesn't make the city council happy. But as stewards, let me finish. As stewards,
continue in this city.
As
Free cars,
stewards,
free food, free trips, and free gas continues in this city.
as stewards of the taxpayers' money, you question whether or not we make good business decisions. Part of this, and I'll tell you what you left out of the equation. Our employees now contribute to their pension system that they did years ago. They now pay
More
part of
money
their
for
health
their
care.
insurance, their health insurance.
And
And without a raise, do you think they
there
can
has
afford
been-
it with
there
the
has
cost
been-
of medicine and medical procedures and doctor
And-
fees going up?
And there has been shared sacrifice. Again, I want to take this is about roads. You made comments about council and their training in that. I need a city council, and we all need a city council that's abreast and on top of what's happening in the modern world of government, whether it's the National League of Cities or the Michigan Municipal League or the Detroit Economic Club. These all bring value to how we grow this city. I would, again, I really want to keep this focus to the roads. There are those who have said that, this money, a $2.5 million increase should be for giving our employees raises. That's not going to happen. We are at the maximum we can levy in our general operations. In coming up with this proposal.
And you couldn't get it done prior to getting to the max? You couldn't get it done?
Going back to your question, you had asked regarding if property values went down, what would happen to the millage rates? Let me answer that question, because we actually, if you look at, we have a higher millage rate than we had previously, but if you look at what your tax bill was back in 2007, and you look at what you're paying now in taxes, you're paying a lot less money because you have a lower taxable value. So ultimately, the price is per household, the average is going to be $108. Whether it means that we have to charge 2.58 to get to it, or three mills to get to it, but ultimately, our bond servicing is going to be $108 per household. So ultimately, every homeowner is not going to see an increase in their tax bill if God forbid that happens. I mean, we've taken enough pain already on our taxable values already in the city.
That's what you say, but put it in writing. That if the taxable value continues to decrease, that you will not levy any more than that $108 figure. You can't even say that, you can't even put it in writing. So what you're not telling the people is that if that taxable value decreases, you're gonna have to levy more taxes to be able to pay that bond payment. You guys are right now struggling and going on a shoestring to keep the library going until you're able to renegotiate the interest rate on the library.
The library is actually doing very well in terms of maintaining, in terms of discipline and cost-cutting measures needed to be able to maintain its operations. Ultimately, we're asking the voters to be able to service these bonds, and that's what we are putting in writing. We are saying what the servicing is going to be, what the level is. So don't say that we're not putting in writing. We are putting in writing. It's clearly stated in there what the servicing is going to be. We're not going to ask for more money because that's how much we're borrowing.
I agree with my audience colleague person. You guys are asking for $99 million to pad it in the event that you don't make the right business decisions. People, if you remember, I told you if you passed that public safety millage, which you were duped and bamboozled, that they would be back in 3 years and ask for another millage or bond. Well, I lied. I said 3 years. It's been 3 years and about 6 months, and we're right here again. So I'm telling you guys to vote no, because if you do it now, they're going to come back in another 3 to 5 years and ask you for more money.
Order, please, and will you please sit down and have your time and be covered up?
Well, people have asked 2 questions.
Please. You did let
I'm not going to
find
do all
out
that
about
with you.
roads. You've had your time at Mondays, open communications.
This is
Now,
a
I see
public
your
forum.
point. Your facts are all wrong. And so, I want to talk about the roads that we really need in a bond that is coming up before the public.
This is because these roads were terrible under your administration.
So,
And this city had a $40 million surplus. Why didn't you do something about it?
Hey, listen, I've been here for 47 years, 30 as mayor, and I don't think there's a darn thing wrong with this.
Another problem that you guys, when you trying to tell people on that sewage project to hook up to the city system, and it didn't even work.
On the roads.
You told us if they hooked up in, they could do it for $6,000, and then you wanted to sell it to them for $12,000? Even that didn't work. The people didn't try it. Don't vote for this village, people. Say no.
And we're going to conclude this meeting, but...
Just one last one.
Sure.
Okay, because Mr. Osborne covered what I was going to say.
One question, please.
Oh, okay, okay.
She was next. That's all right.
She said
I was waiting.
my question was answered. Okay,
No,
thank you.
half of.
I just have one quick question about the roads that are being repaired. Some of the road construction that I see, it looks like it may be for some roads that should be covered by the county, is that correct? Like Gloucester and Telegraph and what's going on in Evergreen. Is that correct? That should be under the county?
No, certain roads, in general, 8 miles is a state road, 9 miles is city road, 10-mile county road commission, road commission of Oakland County, 11 miles city, 12 is the jurisdiction of Oakland County, and 13 is ours. Inkster is ours. Gloucester is the county's. Telegraph is the state. Greenfield is the county road commission, and Southfield, the freeway is the state, and the road commission has the freeway, or the Southfield Road.
Okay, so it is under.
And on all of those, whether it's a state or county road being resurfaced or repaved, we're required to come to the table with a local match.
Okay.
Okay?
So, but looking at your improvement plan map, it appears as if some of the roads are the responsibility of the county that are in this plan, is that correct?
We have that.
Some roads here.
Go ahead, you wanna?
Some of what the additional money from the road millage will help us do is to increase the local match, to give extra points to have a successful securing the fund. All the federally aid-eligible roads in Oakland County, we all compete. So there's an application process, it's a point system of, several pages of the application. And the standard match is a 20% match to an 80% federal dollars for the actual cost of construction. So for something, the only piece offhand that I can think of that's county road on that map is this last piece of Gloucester Road between Civic Center and 11 Mile. That's a county road, but a high priority for the city because of its very bad condition. So far, the county has not been successful in obtaining federal dollars to complete that project. And one of the things that we are able to do is to say, okay, county, the next time we are able to apply. Instead of having a 20% local match, let's make it a 25% local match, and instead of, we usually split that local match with the county. So our match on a county road is typically 10%, county picks up 10. So we can come and say, we'll pick up 15%, county's not going to offer to come to the table with more than their 10%, but this is something where it gives us a little extra dollars to increase the points and the likelihood that that project will receive federal funding. These road projects are so expensive that really, these major roads do not get done without federal dollars. So we've got to be successful in getting those projects to move forward.
Okay, and speaking of federal dollars, considering that Michigan has the highest, one of the higher roads for heavy loads, but we're in the bottom 8 of funding, federal funding. Is there something that's being done to try and lobby the cities coming together under the state of Michigan and lobby for more federal money?
I'm not an expert in that area, but one of the issues in Michigan is we're not even able to fully leverage the federal dollars available from the feds. One of the objectives in what the governor has proposed in his proposal will allow the state to optimize and bring in every federal dollar that the state is eligible for. So there is a lot of lobbying. The fact is we need to have a better policy pertaining to our roads at the federal, the state, and the local level. But there are groups that lobby. The city is part of those groups, be they SEMCOG, who does through SEMCOG has a 30-year transportation plan. We're part of that. They have a federal lobbyist who comes in and briefs us. We sit through those meetings and go through, offer our input. Michigan Municipal League does an awful lot at the state level as well as SEMCOG, but it's all focused on trying to get monies to the first objective is leverage every dollar that can come in from the feds, and it hasn't even been touched on. I think Gary Trussell came pretty close. The federal road formulas don't recognize our free stall cycle. The formula is the same across the country, so it doesn't give the states of the north any consideration that our roads freeze and thaw. So that's all part of the equation. We are working for this. Again, I think the strength of this bond proposal is that this gives us an opportunity for our local residential streets. The feds aren't going to take care of our local residential streets, neither is the state.
Thank you.
Council President Sylvia Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Zorn. I'm going to ask my colleagues, Myron Frazier and Don Percassi, to come up, because when we were looking at this bond that was put before us, it was done with some very, very intense discussions and some very difficult decisions that we had to make. And so I appreciate the engineering firms that are here, and I appreciate those of you that live in the city that are concerned about the city to come out and hear the comments that were made. But this is really, really important to us. If it doesn't pass, we'll keep the same conditions of our roads, and they are at a very deteriorating state. So we've got to make a real tough decision to improve the condition of our roads, and that's only going to happen with the money that we'll get from this bond millage. So we're really asking you to look at the materials that's been put to you and make a tough decision. Do you want the roads to stay the same, or do you want our community to look better, our roads to be better, or do we want to have a city that's not up to par? And one of the reasons that I ran for city council is I love the city of Southfield. I've lived here for 28 years, and I've seen the decline in our roads, so we have to do something. So if you decide to do nothing, all of us will be affected by it. But those of you that live here, please look at the materials, give it some thought, and we really do need your support on this. And I'm going to ask my other colleagues if they'd like to weigh in at this time. Yep.
Thanks, Debbie. I would just like to thank those from the HRC and OHM for being here. I appreciate everybody who took time to come in this evening, and I hope that all your questions that you had were fully answered properly. If there are other questions, you sure can give us a Howard will be more than glad to give the answers to whatever questions you have. This millage, this bond issue is so very important this time, and as the city administrator stated, you're talking about 99 million, you're talking about 99 miles. And that's what it is, it's $1 million a mile. And it's just going to keep getting more expensive. Your salt is going up, your concrete's going up, labor's going up. And so we can try to get the most that we can for the dollars that we have. And this is a fair amount to ask for. I know it's a tough thing to ask, $99 million bond issue at this time, but we really feel that we are bringing this before you because of its necessity. Thank you very much for being here.
I would also like to say thank you for everyone that's shown an interest in coming out here this evening, because could have been doing a lot of other things, but this is very important. And we did puzzle an awful lot over whether or not to put this bond issue on the ballot for this year or next year or whatever. But the time is right for the cost of this issue on our ballot this year. I'd like to borrow a phrase that came up so quite often with our past city administrator, and that is the things that you heard tonight, both from this podium and from the audience. Everyone has the right to have an opinion, but there's only one set of facts. So keep that in mind as you're looking this over. One of the questions, and I sat back there listening to the questions, and one of the questions was, if the load, the actual loads on our roads is so great, why aren't we lobbying to have it lessened? We do. We do everything we can. But the truck lobby is a very powerful lobby, and they get the ear of the legislators. And the fact that they can haul a heavier load over our roads means that they have to have fewer trucks, fewer drivers, to keep their costs down and their profits up. They don't really care about what it costs us to fix the roads. But their lobby is a lot stronger than our lobbyists, and that's a battle that we've been fighting all along. The second thing is, it wasn't brought up tonight, but Michigan is a donor state as far as the federal dollars that we send, federal tax dollars that we send to Washington, that come back to us for road funding. I talked with Senator Levin a few years ago, and we used to get 95 cents on every dollar we sent to Washington to fix our roads. It took him 10 years or more to bring that up from 95 cents to 96 cents. Most of the money goes to the states on the west side where there's more population that can garner more votes to get the money. So we, in addition to everything else, we're a donor state. We don't even get a dollar back for a dollar that we send into Washington. So, but bottom line is, we need to fix the roads. They're deteriorating, and we think that this is the best way, the most economical way to put the least burden on our taxpayers to bring the roads up to something that we can be proud of. Thank you.
We'll conclude this town hall session on roads. I would like to thank everyone for coming out. I encourage you to exercise your democratic rights, vote in the November 4th election. There's been an awful lot said. This is an opportunity to continue the investment in our community, to protect our values, protect our home values, and continue to grow the city in a positive fashion and not get caught up in the negative rhetoric. A lot of the rhetoric this night exchanged, particularly the one conversation, really goes a lot about stealing the values of our homes. So let's protect the values of our homes, continue to reinvest and rebuild this great city. Thank you.